Hello, everybody, and welcome to the history and philosophy of fire prevention. That's module 1 in this course, which is Introduction to Fire Prevention. So you're going to hear the word fire a lot. So just want you to know this here's sorry about my den here. It's kind of a mess. My butler has a day off, and the maid, I don't know, she didn't work today. And then, what the heck? Oh, the Christmas tree is still up? Oh, good grief. You know, it's hard to find good help nowadays. Anyhow, let's get going. We're going to do what we normally do. Share the screen with a PowerPoint. Get all this other garbage done. And let's start at the beginning here. Sorry about that. I wasn't prepared properly, was I? All right. Here we go. Chapter 1, History and Philosophy of Fire Prevention. Yeah, there's some philosophy in fire prevention. All right, overview. We're going to identify tragedies that have led to regulations, and unfortunately, there's a lot of those. Identify contributing factors to fire of historical impact and contributing factors in fires to loss of life. Identify ways that arsonists have been punished in the past. Describe ways that early governments managed to risk fire of commonly found fuels. Identify early fire prevention measures. Identify the major classifications of occupancies. So we're going to start with fire's early impact. We're going to go back a long ways, even before I was born, 300 BC. Early Roman fire departments, they tried to use slaves to do that, but that didn't work out. I kind of know how hard it is to motivate somebody, but I'm guessing it's pretty hard to motivate slaves. But about 26 AD, they gave that up and they had a full-time fire department, so to speak. In Oxford, England, they actually had a guy, bell ringer, they call him, or sometimes, I don't know, but walking around shouting out to cover fire. And the couvre-feu was the French name for cover fire. What that meant was they had to put their fires out, because in those days, everybody heated their homes with fire, cooked and everything, in the same fire, most likely. And that was, guess what? You have fire's good, there's a fire. And so that word of the French word, which became the word we have now today for curfew. So in London in the 12th and 13th centuries, they decreed, or somebody did, no house should be built in this city but of stone, and they must be covered with slate or tile. Houses back then were built with very combustible materials, wood, thatch roofs. In early Rome, they even figured out that most fires are the fault of the inhabitants. The building doesn't just catch on fire by itself. Something sets it on fire. Fire brigades patrolled with rods. I'm guessing that was kind of like having an armed person when they had a rod. And these guys also had to inspect the baths for theft too. So, the Scottish fire prevention effort in the 15th to 17th century, the Scottish Act, it declared that no hemp, lint, straw, hay, heather, or broom be stored near a fire. Edinburgh Improvement Act of 1621, non-combustible roofs. Tradespeople keep heather, broom, winds, and other fuel in center of town or remote areas. That makes sense. It's center of town where there's a fire. It's like I guess it's away from buildings or remote areas. And I'll never forget one day at OK Foods, I walked up the truck shop in Fort Smith. Was half the building of the truck shop and half was a welding shop. And I'm in a truck shop getting my truck serviced, and I walk through to the other side of a welding shop where they're doing welding. And guess what I see? A bale of hay. Needless to say, I ceased operations immediately. And when I pointed it out to the management there, boy, they were embarrassed. They said, hey, we should have known that. Yeah, you should have. So you always got to be on the lookout. England, 1643, bellman, take care of your fire and candle. Bellman would walk around the town shouting this, like a town crier, take care of your fire and candle, warning people about it. And they knew where fires were coming from. They were coming from the fires that were already there, like the fire on your hearth or cooking, and candles that were in use. In 1698, building height restricted to 5 stories. There were actually 14-story high buildings at the time, which sounds pretty good for 1698. I didn't think they built up that high back then, but I guess they did. And in England in 1272, 34 rioters were involved in arson and looting. They got captured and dragged about town until they were dead. They used to shoot looters before in this country even. In 1722, David Hartley, and he had an invention, steel plates with dry sand between them, reducing spread of fire from one floor to another. He got a statue for that. It was a pretty good invention at the time, 1722. Early fire prevention measures in North America, Massachusetts, 1631, Governor John Winthrop. He signed an order that prohibited wood chimneys and thatched roofs. Kind of figure what took them so long, right? Wooden chimneys and thatched roofs. Think about it for a minute. Where's your chimney? Right above your fire. New York, 1648, governor appointed 4 fire wardens to inspect wooden chimney and thatched roofed houses, imposed fines for improperly swept chimneys. Reading, PA, 1785, required alteration of chimneys in blacksmith shops to make them fire resistive. Why blacksmith shops? I'm guessing they lined them with metal. 1807, prohibited the smoking of cigars on the street after sunset, sitting on porches or doorways without the owner's permission, and use of fireworks. I don't know why people were going around sitting on porches and doorways without the owner's permission, but I guess they were. New York, 1960, all residential buildings built for more than 8 families equipped with fireproof stairs and fire escapes. I don't know why they drew the line at 8 families, but that's what was the law in 1860. Boston, 1873, the first annual conference of the National Association of Fire Chiefs. Main topic was fire prevention. The National Association of Fire Engineers had a conference, and they covered fire protection systems for buildings, flammability of structural components, high-rise buildings, heating equipment. That's a source of fire. Earlier detection and fire department notification through human surveillance, or fire watchers. Improved emergency egress. Egress, you know what that means, getting out. Need to investigate cause of all fires and prosecution of maliciously set fires. Good ideas all. Tragedy, spur to regulations. Unfortunately, as they say about OSHA regulations, they are written in blood, which means that somebody got hurt, and that's why we need to have these regulations. Pretty much the same thing is true for fire regulations. And we're going to cover some areas like public assembly being the first one we're going to talk about. So public assembly, theaters, that type of thing, churches. 1876, New York, Brooklyn Theater. The stage backdrop ignited. 195 people were killed. That's a lot of people. 1903, Iroquois, Chicago's newest theater, absolutely fireproof. Yeah, the Titanic was unsinkable too. Light set the curtain on fire. There were no fire extinguishers. The exits swept inward. There was no venting to allow the smoke itself out. 603 people died. 1903. 1940, Natchez, Mississippi, a small dance hall, combustible decorations, 1 exit with a door opening inward. 207 died, more than 200 injured. Public Assembly, 1942, Coconut Grove, Boston. 1942, many people were in there, were getting ready to go to war. Revolving doors, when they got the fire out, had people stacked 4 and 5 deep trying to get out, clawing the way to get out of the revolving doors. 492 lives lost. Revolving doors aren't good in a fire. 1944, Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey Circus, again in a public assembly, Hartford, Connecticut. Tent not properly flame retardant. 163 deaths and 261 injuries. 1977, Beverly Hills Supper Club, Southgate, Kentucky. Okay, don't ask me why it's called Beverly Hills Supper Club in Southgate, Kentucky, but it was. Exits were insufficient for the crowd. Interior furnishings were combustible. This was a huge building too. It was a very, very large place. 165 died, and big impact on energy improvements. And I don't think to this day that property's even been done anything with. I think it's just still been left like it was. 2003, Chicago, a nightclub fire, 21 killed, 57 injured. 2013, Kiss nightclub, Santa Maria, Brazil. Pyrotechnics ignited the insulation. Yeah, you can always wonder about pyrotechnics indoors. There's a place for everything, and I don't think pyrotechnics indoors is a good idea. There was dark conditions, no exit signs, exits blocked by guards to be sure people paid their bill. 230 people died. 2003, West Warwick, Rhode Island, nightclub fire, 100 dead. Vessels. Before we get to vessel on this vessels, I've had a little bit of experience with actual fires. When I was just a pup in Pittsburgh, I was working at got my job out of the Air Force as a production manager trainee. And I think it was the first summer there, they always closed 2 weeks for vacation. That was the company policy. They shut down for 2 weeks. Well, me and the mechanic, and we had done this, worked on it before, and we laid out the plant. They wanted to rearrange the workflow, the whole plant. So we put it all on down on paper and everything. And then we hired temp agency people, and they left the plant managers and the vice president. Well, they left him and me do it. I was surprised. I mean, he was a mechanic and I was just a production manager trainee, but we got it done. And we were wrapping up. We were cleaning up, and there was a pile of dust from the lights and stuff like that. And one of the mechanic was grinding off some wheels off some racks, and the spark hit that pile of dust, and poof, it went up pretty quick. Fortunately, we had fire extinguishers nearby, and we got it put out. And so that wasn't too bad. All right, vessels. 1904 steamer General Slocum, named after obviously a general. This was a German church picnic outing. So it was during the week, was mostly women and children. When the fire started in front of the boat, they got a fire hose out. It burst. It was terrible. The life vests were just deteriorated. In fact, they became worse. They were, like cork inside. So when water hit them, it just like one guy said they threw their daughter. We put a knife, put her in, threw her off the boat, and she just sunk. The crew was not trained. They didn't know how to do anything. The lifeboats were useless. They were painted to the deck. 1,030 people died, either from fire or drowning. This was in East River. East River is huge in New York. And so they 1,030 people is pretty sad. 1947, SS Grand Camp, Texas City, Texas, taking on a shipment of ammonium nitrate. Explosion killed all but 7 of the ship's crew and almost the entire fire department of Texas City. Fires and other explosions continued. 468 died, more than 2,000 injured. When I was in California, we were a polyester processing company, basically, but the president of the company made some filtration products, and some filtration products were made out of cotton. So he decided we were going to make filtration products out of cotton. So we tried, and we didn't have the right equipment. But cotton and polyester are completely different. Polyester, if you set a match to it, it won't burn. It'll melt. It'll melt pretty quickly. But cotton, you set a match to it, it'll burn. It'll burn quickly. It'll burn for a long time. So we had 3 fires on cotton in a matter of, I don't know, a couple of months. I don't remember what it was. The first one, and we weren't exactly sure of why any of them happened. The spark went down, I don't know. One was, we thought maybe it was an electrical conduit to come apart. But the first one was like 12 sprinkler heads went off. So it was pretty good fire. Fortunately, none of these fires did anybody ever get hurt, or did any of them ever cause any permanent or damage, not very much damage at all. But this was a polyester fiber production facility, and we had sprayed resin on products. So this overspray can accumulate, and it did. After the next day after this, the first fire, we called in the guys from the sprinkler system, and they came in and replaced all the sprinkler heads went off. I think 12 of them went off. And he called me over and he gave me a sprinkler head, and he showed it to me. He said, "Look at this." He said, "This was right in the middle of them. It didn't go off. It was so corroded with overspray from the resin, so that you were allowed, and I guess you still have to place a plastic bag over the sprinkler heads as long as it's not more than 1 mil, which we started doing after that to protect them from the overspray." So, and then after this all happened, and the fire department guy comes up with a red tag about a month later and says, "You had 3 fires on this line. We're shutting it down." And I said, "Yeah, we had 3 fires on this line because we were running cotton. You can look around you now. We don't run cotton anymore. We gave up on that. Didn't work. So there's no cotton in here. All we have is polyester. And he said, you've had 3 fires on this line. We're shutting it down. That's all he could say. So he shut it down. So we had to spend about $50,000 making non-sparking connections, stuff like that, which were absolutely positively unnecessary now because we weren't running cotton. But we had to do it to appease the fire department because they couldn't tell the difference between polyester and cotton. Well, all right. Industrial facilities. Now we're going to talk about that. 1911 New York. Throughout your career in safety, you're going to hear a lot about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. It's a classic disaster. Exit doors were locked because the management was checking employees' purses for theft. So they locked the doors. 60 people jumped out of windows. This is like the 8th to 11th floor. 145 were killed, mostly young women. It did spur New York labor and fire laws, but it was just an unnecessary tragedy. 2013, West Texas, West Fertilizer Company. You probably heard about this, the ammonium nitrate explosion. 2.1 on the Richter scale. That's how powerful it was. It destroyed 50 homes, damaged 100 or so more, and 14 were killed and 160 people were injured. Industrial facilities, 1991, Imperial Sugar, Hamlet, North Carolina. Several inoperable exits. Intense fire, 25 fatalities, 54 injuries. Inoperable exits. That's bad. Exits should work. I mean, that's just terrible that happens because that's just not excusable. Mines, not a lot about mines in this course, but this was 110 deaths out of Vondale Collier in Plymouth. And in 1910, it created the U.S. Bureau of Mines was created. Hotels are good for, well, not good, but they're well known for fires back then. 1946, the Weinkauf Hotel in Atlanta, again, advertised as fireproof. Open stairway permitted smoke and heat up the stairs. 119 killed, 168 injured. LaSalle Hotel in Chicago, 61 lives lost. Canfield Hotel in Dubuque, Iowa, 19 deaths, 1946. 1986, DuPont Plaza Hotel, San Juan, Puerto Rico, deliberately set 96 fatalities, 140 injuries, led to improved fire safety standards in Puerto Rico. Okay, now we're going to switch to nursing homes, hospitals, and housing for older adults. Don't you guys get any ideas about talking to me about that? 1957, Katie Jane Nursing Home, Warrenton, Missouri. No sprinkler system. It was a Sunday afternoon, so a lot of visitors there. 72 people died. 1963, Fitchville, Ohio, Home for the Aged. 63 deaths in a fire. 1949, St. Anthony's Hospital in Effingham, Illinois. Combustible interior finish, no sprinklers. 74 died. 1961, Hartford Hospital, Hartford, Connecticut. Combustible ceiling tile. Trash and linen chutes, opened directly. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Trash and linen chutes open directly into corridors. You want to shoot like that, I'll do like everywhere. There'll just be a funnel, it'll be like a chimney for the fire to go up. 16 died from this percent and the smoke and the heat. Just 13 days in December 1989, fires killed 23 residents in 3 different housing facilities for the elderly. Not one of them was licensed or operated as a nursing home. One was in Roanoke County, Virginia. Some occupants difficult to awaken and reluctant to leave their apartments. 4 people died. Waterton, New York, smoke movement from the first floor point of origin responsible for the 3 fatalities. And Johnson City, Tennessee, non-sprinklered 16 fatalities. All 3, a combustible interior finish was a factor. Schools, 1908, Lakeview School, Collinwood, Ohio. Open stairways, combustible materials contributed to fire spread, 175 killed. And you know, if it's in a school, you know, 175 were children. 1923, Cleveland School, Camden, South Carolina. During commencement, an oil lamp fell on the stage. School was slated to be replaced by a new building the next year. 77 deaths. 1924, Babs Switch, Oklahoma. 2-room elementary school. Christmas event. Only 1 exit. 36 individuals died. New London, Texas in 1937, a major explosion. Improper use of gas. 297 killed. 1958, Our Lady of Angels School, Chicago. There was a delay in turning an alarm and contacting the fire department. 95 lives lost. If you ever have a fire, even a small fire, you call 911, get the fire department coming to you. If you put the fire out before you get there, that's just fine. One day in California, our building that at Bond Fiber Products, we had two buildings, and they were about 70 feet apart on the same side of the road. And we owned, it was like a lot in between them. It was ours too. And one day I just kind of, it was done by the front of the building close to the main, it was on a dead end street. I was building closest to the entrance, the road that came into the place. And I saw a fire department. I said, oh boy, look at the fire truck coming down the street. We're glad it's not us. Well, then he pulls in between our two buildings. I said, what the heck's going on? So I run outside, never heard anything about going on. And what happened was there was a shed out there that had some gear and it had an air compressor in it. And the air compressor froze up, but the motor kept running. And this belt was just spinning and spinning and spinning and just threw out fumes of smoke. Well, the neighbors behind us were across the railroad tracks and they couldn't get to us. So they called 911. Rightly so. They did the right thing. And so I went out there and meanwhile, one of the mechanics, he saw that and he got in there and he shut it off. So the fire department bus guy, he had his hose out on. He was just dying to squirt that thing. He says, let me put some water on that. I said, no, it's okay. It's shut off. It's the smoke's going to go away. It'll dissipate soon. You know, I didn't want him to put any water on something that we didn't have to. He sure wanted to, but there was no fire. We just smoke from that belt. But the people across behind us, they did the right thing by calling 911. I would have done the same thing. Prisons, 1930, Ohio State Penitentiary. Most were trapped in their cells, 320 killed. Now that's got to be a tough one in prison, way to there's a fire. 1977, 3 major prison fires. Danbury, Connecticut, federal prison, 5 fatalities. Maury County, Tennessee, a county jail, 42 dead. St. John's, New Brunswick, Canada, 21 killed. Conflagrations. This is the definition they use in the book. A destructive fire covering a large area, often able to cross natural barriers and frequently causing major life and property loss. That's what they're calling a conflagration. Until the 20th century, buildings were long marked by excessive use of combustible materials without much regard for protection from fire. I should say without. Lack of firewalls and vertical cutoffs, wood shingle roofs. July 4th, 1866, Portland, Maine, started by fireworks. July 4th, 1,500 buildings destroyed. 10,000 people left homeless. Fortunately, only 2 fatalities, but 10,000 people left homeless. 1871 in Midwest USA, 2 greatest fires in the history of the Midwest. It was after a prolonged drought. In Chicago, the fire was 4 miles, and by 2/3 of a mile, 300 people dead. In Wisconsin, it was 2,400 square miles. 1,152 lives lost. That's a huge fire. Great Seattle fire wiped out 66 square blocks, 200-person bucket brigade. Seattle's an odd city. It's built on stilts. And when we were there for one of my nephew's wedding, I don't know, a long time ago, we toured down. You can get down and take tours, and one of the things that they sell these big black rats, because that's what they're known for down there underground is rats. So I'm surprised Seattle didn't name one of their sports teams, the Rats. Would have made sense. 1904, Baltimore destroyed 80 blocks of downtown business center. Incoming firefighters hampered by incompatible fire hose threads. Paterson, New Jersey, 1902, lost nearly 500 buildings. 1861, Lindsay, Ontario, most of the town was destroyed. Chelsea, Massachusetts had 2 catastrophic fires. One in 1908 destroyed 1,500 buildings, and in 1973 destroyed 18 city blocks. 1923, Berkeley, California, 640 structures destroyed. 1961, Los Angeles, California, more than 500 dwellings destroyed. It clarified the need to return to more restrictive code provisions. I lived in Southern California for 28 years in what they call the Basin. I lived in Downey, a town between Los Angeles and Long Beach. And there were fires around, but they never were there. That was only where the rich people lived, outside of the basin, so to speak. But we would go golfing sometime in the foothills, and generally speaking, toward the east part of LA. And sometimes we'll be out there and there'd be fires we could see from where we were golfing. It was kind of like uncomfortable to see these fires. We were here playing golf. But they were, by then, I guess we were safe. I mean, it didn't come close. It was just kind of unnerving to have a fire nearby while you're playing golf. Oakland, California, 1991, 3,469 housing units lost. Property loss estimated $1.5 billion. Dry conditions and steep terrain contributed. 26 people died. Earthquake and fire in 1906, San Francisco, California. We've all heard about the San Francisco earthquake. And the severity of fires was increased due to the fact that water mains were broken by the earthquake and firefighting equipment difficult to deploy because there were buildings laying all over the place. 28,000 buildings destroyed, property loss estimated at $350 million, over $7 billion today, and 422 lives were lost. This is a conflict. You want to find this in your book, Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, January 2008. More than 150 World War II barracks destroyed, burned 100 acres. A very windy day. I was working at OK Foods. I happened to be out with the guy going out to some of the farms to look with them there. And I mean, it was real windy. We had a fire inside one of the, it was emptied out, chicken building, and we were inside trying to put the fire out with just what we had there, water and buckets. And finally, the fire department showed up with a tanker, and but that wind was just wicked. And that same day, a nurse at OK Foods, her house burnt down, and I know her, she worked for me, so I know her very well. And she told me her dog was she was good. Well, she wasn't at home when it happened. She was visiting a friend, and she wasn't sure whether she'd take her dog or not. Her dog was acting kind of funny, so she took her dog. And she didn't know for sure if the dog already smelled something before that, because it wasn't too long after she left the place that the house burnt down. But she thinks maybe her dog knew something about it and was acting. That's why it was acting funny. So anyhow, she took her dog and saved the dog's life. Okay. Variables in philosophy of fire prevention. This is not a big deal, and just more, but I'll tell you what we're talking about here. Now, prevention. We usually say fire prevention is a big umbrella for all this stuff, and that's fine. But prevention is an act or intervention that stops something from happening. Control of open flames, for example, removal of combustibles such as leaves. That's preventing it. Measures taken that are taken to preclude the possibility that a fire will start are more truly the essence of fire protection. So the fire's not even going to start. Now, fire reaction would be like escape plans, fire drills. What do you do after the fire? Okay, that's a reaction to the fire. So you have prevention, reaction, and then you have prevention of fire spread, like non-combustible building materials that doesn't stop the fire, but it keeps it from spreading. Same with non-combustible clothing and even fire extinguishers. But the term fire safety, fire prevention is seen by many as encompassing fire prevention, fire reaction, and prevention of fire spread. So if you use the term fire safety or even probably fire prevention, everybody pretty much understands it just about has anything to do with fire prevention, reaction to the fire, and prevention from spreading. Because most of the problems they had, especially with the wooden homes back in the early centuries, was spreading. A small fire start, but they just couldn't stop it from spreading. These are the 5 biggest contributing factors to catastrophes and fires. Blocked exits. I don't know how many of these accidents that we talked about have blocked exits, doors that open inward, and anything from any public assembly place, the door should never open inward. Flammable or combustible finishes on the interiors, absence of alarms, there's no alarms at all. Lack of automatic sprinklers. Automatic sprinklers are fantastic. They are one of the best inventions ever. And California was way stricter than the rest of the country and the world on automatic sprinklers. You couldn't build anything with automatic sprinklers in California for I don't know how many years. So most of their buildings there are, and they work. They work. So in summary, the ability to find a solution to fire risks isn't enough. It takes leadership and a willingness to influence those who have the power to make necessary changes. So we talked about the importance of history and the things, how it worked out, major fires, and generally the philosophy of fire prevention. So I hope you found this interesting. Read the book, read this chapter. It's a very, very interesting chapter. And actually the book is very interesting. And this is I've been around this kind of stuff, but I never got this deep into it before, as deep as this book's getting into it. So it's really enjoyable, and I think you'll like it too. So that's it. Be safe.